Hey everybody, and thank you for joining me for today's virtual panel. I originally had planned to do something like this at GeekFest 2020, and of course everything is now virtual, so I want to do a big thank you for them still finding a way to have us get together and celebrate cosplay and all the fun costuming stuff that we can do, even though we can't get together, so. It's Spooktober, and it's fully in full force. I wore my spooky earrings. Got my ghost bustin' duds on, and I'm ready to help teach you some important safety tips for when you want to start crafting that amazing costume or cosplay next. After all, cosplay involves a number of techniques that can be used, and any one costume could use all of the techniques from foam armor building to sewing, painting, dyeing, resin casting. It's safe to say that there's quite a bit of things to learn, and you're going to be working with a lot of new materials. So here are some safety tips to keep you happy, healthy, and crafting. Let's get into it. As always, please be sure to read all of the instructions when working with any new materials or things or products that you happen to purchase for cosplay. Each manufacturer may have different recommendations for working with that project, and so you should definitely take that into consideration. Painting. Paint in a well-ventilated area, and not all paints are created equal. So aerosol paint cans, they can sometimes leave a fine particle of dust if you spray them in an area that's not well ventilated. That'll rest on everything. It could rest on your desk that you're working on, everything really. And the worst part is those particles can get into your lungs. So it's important to make sure your space is well ventilated, and also to make sure that you have, I always like to wear a mask or something to kind of prevent those particles from getting in anyways, just to be on the safe side. You only have one you, and you got to take care of it because you use it for every cosplay, right? Now, when it comes to things like acrylic-based paints or enamel paints, you can paint with those inside. They won't, obviously, because you're not spraying it in the air, they won't leave a thin layer of dust, but it is still important to make sure that your area is ventilated. I like to make sure to lay something down so that cleanup is quick and easy. And pro tip, for those of you who are cleaning out your brushes, it's important to rinse them out and wash them out with cool or cold water instead of hot water. Hot water can actually break down the glue that holds the bristles together and the fibers together at the base, and it could take that brush that you have and ruin it so much faster. Nobody wants to spend a lot of money on a brush and then destroy it. Likewise, nobody wants to have the brush they just bought be completely destroyed because it was maybe a cheap brush. Okay. You just melted it. So just make sure cool water when rinsing off your brushes instead of hot water. Also, paper plates make a really good palette to lay things down, just in case. If you are working with power tools, especially if you're doing foam or woodworking, sometimes people like to carve their props out of wood, or sometimes they like to make armor out of foam, or maybe a combination of the two. Either way, you're going to want to get some safety glasses. It's a little scary how even if it's just a Dremel or something small, the type of particles that can hit your eyes are very sensitive. And you don't want a sliver of wood or something like that getting jammed into your eye. And now you have to stop what you're doing. You have to go to the ER, make sure everything's okay, or you have to at least stop and rinse out your eye and check everything. It can be pretty dangerous. So I would just recommend getting some safety glasses. There was a time when I was working on a project and I was using an electric sander, a little palm sander, to kind of sand some wood stuff. And I happened to be wearing glasses anyways. But as I was sanding it, a chunk came off and just dinged right off of my glass lens. And I kept thinking, if I hadn't had those glasses on, there's a good chance that we would have been done crafting for the day, and I would have probably been at the very least rinsing my eye out and possibly going to the ER to get that checked out. So, get some safety glasses. They'll actually save you a lot in the long run. And honestly, once you start crafting with them, you kind of forget they're there. I've gone 3-4 hours wearing them before, and it's been nothing. It's been fine. So safety glasses are a really fun investment, especially when you're using the electric stuff. And of course, I also really like gloves. Like when I when I started crafting, I didn't use gloves a lot. Like I was like, I don't need gloves. What are gloves for? But not only have I fallen in love with gloves recently, I have fallen in love with different types of gloves, and they're different things, different products, but they're so incredibly helpful, not just for cleanup, but like I have a pair of canvas gloves that have good grip on them for when I'm doing like a lot of woodworking stuff and things like that. That's very helpful, when you're working with, because sometimes you want to make the base of a product, sometimes you want to make the base of a prop out of wood, or sometimes there's just something that you want that heft to it, and I feel like I have a pair, they're canvas gloves, but they have like kind of like a leather grip on the inside, and they're just really great, and I really like using them to make sure that I can maintain my grip while I'm working on them. They're canvas gloves, and they have kind of like this cool like leather gripped material on the inside, and I like to use them because it helps me maintain my grip on it if I'm sanding or doing something. It also helps me not get slivers and splinters and things like that in my hands and like really tear my hands up. And I kind of dig it because it's really neat. So if you can afford to grab yourself some gloves for any kind of like stuff, definitely do that. And of course, when working with anything electrical, normal electrical rules apply. Don't plug it into a socket that looks like it's super questionable, and try not to do it around large amounts of water. You definitely, just some common sense safety on those two parts. But the gloves are those are super helpful for me. I really loved the gloves. If you're not old enough to work with power tools, but there's something that you really want to use it for, like say you really want someone to drill some holes into some PVC pipes because you're trying to make like a jointed structure or something of that nature, never be afraid to ask for help from somebody else. So if you're, kind of younger, you can ask for, a parent or guardian to sit there and assist you, or maybe an older sibling or someone who is, old enough to work with those power tools. Because that won't be the majority of your craft. So you could just ask for help for a little bit, and then you can go back to your crafting project. Some projects are so big, like construction wise are big, that you almost need two people, like one person to hold the thing steady and another person to drill the holes or whatever. So buddy system up, and never be afraid to ask for help if you actually need help. Because it's kind of fun to share your crafting experience with somebody else. So that's awesome and nice and fun. Okay, so custom gems are actually really popular to use in a number of your cosplay pieces, as well as use in a number of your prop making pieces. And it's really fun to work with, but if you haven't actually worked with resin or resin casting, it's important to remember that that is a chemical reaction that you're using. You're mixing parts A and parts B into basically a new chemical reaction, and that reaction will harden and make the gems. Because you're working with chemicals, it's possible that, you could be allergic to those chemicals. I actually have a friend who is allergic to the chemical that helps the gems set to harden, and her hands will break out if she ends up handling or working with them before they're completely fully set and sealed. So a good tip for that is to make sure to get some maybe some cheap throwaway gloves. The kind of gloves that they would use for lab work and things like that. Now they do make it in latex and non-latex, and some people are allergic to latex. So I would just make sure, if you're not sure if you're allergic or not, to just get the non-latex just to be on the safe side. But wearing that can definitely help keep those chemicals off your skin and help prevent you from receiving a chemical burn. Definitely do it in a ventilated area, because you don't want to be breathing in the fumes from those chemical reactions. Nobody wants to get dizzy or nauseous or anything like that. So same rule with the paint, same rule with the contact cement. Just pop a window, make sure it's ventilated, and make sure you've got good airflow when you're working with that. I will say it's also kind of helpful if you put down something to protect your workspace as well, maybe some newspapers or cardboard. Once a long time ago, when we were building our Ghostbuster packs, we were making our whole proton packs and our neutrino ones and the whole shebang. And it was a lot of fun. But one of the things that we had never done before is we had never actually worked with resin casting, and we wanted these really cool custom grips to go in the Neutrona one to look very much like the first movies. So we were working on sculpting it. We made our mold, and even though we tried very hard to make sure that we had like, you know, the right parts of A and B, and that we had measured it correctly, and that we had dyed the resin the correct color we wanted to, something kind of went wrong somewhere where we ended up having too much of it. So as we poured it in and it started to harden, it actually overflowed our mold and onto all of our workspace. And it was a little bit crazy. It kind of looked like one of those like little overflowing, you know, those volcano things that you can do for like school projects. It looked like that, and it was crazy. Thankfully I'd had a newspaper down, but if could go back in time, I would have gone back in time and put down like cardboard or something like that, because 100%, it was hot. Like the liquid was hot when it hit stuff, and it made a huge mess, guys. It was a little scary. So don't forget to protect your workspace, protect your breathing, and protect your hands when crafting with custom resin or like pouring custom resin, because you definitely want to make sure that everything is protected. I'm going to go into some tips for fabric dyeing based on experiences that I had and things that I wish I had kind of known before I got into it, and also so that you don't do the same mistakes I do. So speaking of protecting things, I've got another like mini crafting horror story to tell you. Fabric dye is a harsh mistress, and it will dye things indiscriminately. So if you've ever tried to use fabric dye before to maybe do a cool custom ombre on a gown, or if you wanted to just dye a whole bunch of fabric, a color real fast, and you bought this stuff, well, there's a lot of different techniques you can use, but just be aware that if it splashes onto anything you are wearing, it will dye. It does not care. It will dye, and it will dye quickly. I was using, the Ritz dye that you get from Joann's, and I was dyeing some things, and I took I did the the boiled pot method, and so I had like this big pot that was full of the very hot dye, and I had dyed stuff, and I took it in the bathroom because I didn't want to stain the countertops and the cabinets and all of the stuff with all of the amounts of dye. I was like throwing stuff in and taking out, throwing it in and taking it out. So I was dyeing them and then laying them into the tub. So I didn't lay anything down on the tub. I was just laying these newly dyed pieces of fabric into my tub. And then I went to rinse them out. And of course, it kind of gets a little bit of purple in the tub. And then I was like, well, I'm done dyeing, so I'm just going to pour all of this water down the drain in my tub. So I, carefully tipped it and poured it out. It splashed back up. It got my shirt, which was very scary because that dye is very, very hot. But not only that, it dyed my tub. I was renting. It dyed the tub purple. Nobody was thrilled. Nobody. So, yeah. That was also when I learned the very important lesson that you 100% want to use rubber gloves when you're dyeing things. Because if it stains your nails or your hands, they will be that way for weeks. Like, it'll be that way until your hands decide that they're gonna regenerate the skin cells, basically. So you definitely don't want to go to school, go to work, go to class with that kind of situation on your hands. And also, the rubber gloves really do protect you from the heat. Other fun safety tip, just an FYI, if you are going to do like I did, and you're going to use a pot to bring water to boil, and then you're going to put the dye in that pot and all that other things, you don't want to use that pot again for food, because it it has dye and it has chemicals in it. You definitely don't want to ingest those chemicals, and those particles can remain inside of the pot. What I recommend, go to Goodwill. Like, they always have cheap pots, cheap pans. You can literally buy one specifically just for all of your cosplay dyeing needs, or even home good dyeing needs. Whatever you want to dye stuff with. You can actually go to Goodwill, buy a pot, use that pot. Like, label it right on it with a Sharpie, not for food, for cosplay only. Something to let other people in your household know, like, yo, this is for cosplay. Maybe don't even keep it in the kitchen. Maybe keep it in, like, wherever you keep your cosplay power tools or other supplies or whatever. But definitely don't want to ingest all of those chemicals and those particles and stuff. So that's what I would definitely do. They also, like the dollar store and stuff, they have cheap wooden spoons and things like that. So if you want to get like one of those to like, turn it because like the water's very hot and all that jazz, wooden spoons will work better than plastic spoons. Plastic spoons will get bendy in hot water. You'll want to use wooden spoons. Like, wooden spoons are best when dealing with clothing dye, okay? So, don't dye your tub. Don't be like me. That's the other thing, like, the dollar store or, like, Dollar General or whatever, that's a magical place. It's got a lot of cool supplies and things that you can get. Like, you can literally go there and get, like, the rubber gloves for the sink. For dyeing stuff. You can get the wooden spoons. You can, get all of these things at a pretty reasonable price since you're planning on using them for cosplay and not like traditional uses for those products. And it's actually really helpful. It keeps you safe. Fun tip. So if you do happen to use the washing machine method for dyeing stuff, it's important that you want to make sure you get all of like the dye material and stuff like that out of it. I like to run another cycle after the cycle that we did the wash from, but you put like a cup of white vinegar into the wash instead of like laundry detergent. And that white vinegar really helps to like clean everything out of there to make sure that, you're not going to like throw a load of whites in right after or whatever. Now you get tie-dyed clothes because you just forgot like, oh yeah, the last time I ran the wash machine, it was for cosplay. And now I've ruined all my work shirts or something, So yeah, just a cup of white vinegar will totally fix that out. And I can't believe it took me until basically this year to figure that last one out. And I've been cosplaying for like 10 years. So that's a good tip that I wish someone had shared with me sooner. I was like, wait, what? Like, you don't just have to put detergent in there. You don't have to just wash a whole bunch. Like, no, you throw some white vinegar in it, wash it once, and it's good to go. And I'm like, I wish I had known. But now you know, so you won't have that problem. So I can get really excited about my cosplay projects, and I'm a little bit, I can't believe it took me this long to stop being so impulsive with suddenly starting to work on a crafting stuff. Like, I would come home from, like class or come home from work or whatever, and I'd want to dive immediately into my project, but without setting up like the space properly and without dressing for success, you can end up making yourself very, very sad. I can't tell you how many times I have accidentally spilled paint, dye, contact cement on like a good pair of jeans or on like a favorite shirt or a hoodie simply because I didn't like a little bit of forward thought. So I have this new philosophy. It's called Dress for Success with Cosplay. And basically, before I start crafting with materials that can stain, paint, things like that, I have kind of an old pair of jeans that I've already stained and painted and dyed, and are now just permanently cosplay jeans that I'll throw on, as well as like a sweatshirt that has like paint and stuff on it. So just make sure to wear clothes that you're okay with getting, stained, you're okay with getting painted, you're okay, with possible rips and tears depending on what you're working with or what you're doing. If you have long hair, I would definitely recommend pulling your hair up. I can't tell you how many times I used to have my hair like in like a high ponytail, and I would be like maybe staining a pommel of something with like wood stain or something, and I'd lean forward and my ponytail would come swinging around and just dunk right into the thing of stain or, whatever I was working with. I'm like, oh, and now my hair has stain on it. Great. I have to stop what I'm doing and wash my hair. So, or even if it was just down and you like lean forward. So I like to pull my hair up, put it in a bun, keep it so that it's up and away from my face. That's also helpful if you're working with power tools because it won't get caught in anything. Because that's scary. You definitely don't want that to happen. And like I said before, gonna reiterate here because I can't tell you how much I love gloves. Like you can wear the rubber gloves for doing dishes, right? You can wear those for dyeing fabric. You can wear those for staining wood. Yeah, because wood will stain your hands too, just like fabric dye. And it's super helpful. The like non-latex or the kind of tight lab fitting gloves, those are great when you're like doing molding things that are maybe have chemicals that you could be allergic to, or if you have very sensitive skin. It's great for making resin gems and things like that, so that if something splashes onto you, you're not going to have that issue. And then, like I said, I have some canvas gloves with no slip grip for when I'm working with wood or I'm drilling holes in PVC pipes and things like that, just so that I can maintain my grip and also make sure that things don't go wonka doodles. I don't get like splinters and stuff. And of course, pair that with all the other stuff. Pair that with, the glasses if you happen to be doing something where particles can fly. That's anything from sanding to drilling to sawing or cutting. Like, yeah, wear some safety glasses. It could save you some trouble. Make sure things are well ventilated and that you've prepared your space or area as necessary too, with either, placing down a tarp or placing down some newspapers to protect your space. It's important to remember that small mistakes can happen and it's part of the learning process. Just make sure to have yourself as prepared as you can be to make sure that the process is, more fun and not painful, because it's more important that you have fun with cosplay than that you maybe learn something the hard way. Also, to help minimize the damage to your home, which I've done a lot of, and to make cleanup easier. So in conclusion, it helps to pick up a few items to have kind of around the house for whatever project you're working on before you get excited about working on that project. That being, the necessary tools and equipment that you'll need, protective gloves and eyewear, and of course, make sure you set aside some clothes that you're comfortable with getting messy in the event that things get a little messy. That's part of the learning process also. Remember to use the right tool for the job. A little bit of preparation can save you time and trouble down the road. Thanks again for watching. I'm so happy that we had you here today, and a big thank you to GeekFest for still having the virtual convention. Hopefully I've been able to give you some helpful tips and tricks that will help you in all of your cosplay adventures going forward. And I hope everyone has fun crafting. I can't wait to see what you guys create.